It's your buddy, Big Johnny G, the Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. Happy Monday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, or whatever day it is that you're watching. What's up, everyone? Thank you very much for joining us here for this Midday Monologue Monday. Now, today I want to talk about something that concerns this franchise right above my finger. That's right, Dungeons and Dragons. Specifically, old school. Specifically, some classic Gygaxian action. In a board game! Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. Look at all that. And that's not even all of the Dungeons & Dragons-based board games. I know this. But what I'm talking about, they haven't attempted yet. I'm talking something completely epic. Something huge. Tomb of Horror. Arguably the most talked about Gary Gygax Advanced Dungeons & Dragons module of all time. Actually, probably the most talked about Dungeons & Dragons product, period, of all time. Some players consider this the greatest BS module of all time. Others consider it the greatest badge of honor that they can ever have being a D&D player. I was there, first generation player of the module. I think it meant something different to us back then because Dungeons & Dragons meant something a little bit different, and was a little bit different then than it is now. Which may be one reason why it's ridiculed and misunderstood by so many that weren't there at the beginning, or soon enough afterwards. But I'm not here to talk about that point. I'm simply here to tell you what I think I would like to expect to see if anyone had the cojones to try to make Tomb of Horrors a board game. Okay, so this is why I thought I had to jot it down. Okay, now, without doubt, although I am, and my wallet less so than me, although I am not a fan of expensive, huge, big, epic miniature board games, I unfortunately have to say I think that would probably be the best way to go. Now, I think the key factor in this, first of all, because it's going to be a big game, it's going to be a large box. It's going to be a big cube of a box, or maybe a long coffin-style box. And that's going to be highly important because the inside of the lid, along with the outside of the box, the inside of the lid, and the entirety of the bottom of the box are all going to be key components in putting together the board. Now, another factor that's going to be important with putting the board together, because the board is going to have to play a highly important role. The board itself is a character in this game, an adversarial character. So I believe that the best way to continue to approach this is to get away with an inlay for the box and instead use smaller box trays, such as Gamelin Games has done with Tiny Epic Tactics, or Gale Force 9 has done with Firefly, Brigands, and Browncoats. This is going to allow the use of building the tomb up and making higher levels. And this will play an important factor with some of the key components for the board game, the way I'm seeing it. Now, let's face it, there are some terrible, terrible opponents inside that module. There are undying creatures. There's a secondary lich. There's the demi-lich himself. There are terrors that are going to be coming at you from all directions. But it's not all about the adversaries that you are encountering. Traps. Gygax was a master at traps. He taught a generation, and still generations, how you put together a truly devastating trap system in a fantasy world. So this is where the components are going to be playing a big part. Now, they're going to be 3D components for this game if you're going to make it work. If you really, really want to do this, and you're balls out and don't care about how much the production is going to cost because you believe that there's going to be a strong enough interest that would throw this Kickstarter probably almost at levels, dare I say, that Return to Dark Tower hit. It's possible. It can be done. Components are going to be a key factor in this. Not only because there's something we love to look at, even if they're not totally useful in the game, or needed, I should say. But here they will be needed. Here, they're all going to play a part, because you're never going to know if they have anything to do with a trap, or if they're just trappings in the dungeon background. This is going to include doorways as well. And if you really want to have a super deluxe version of this, you're even going to want to go, because there'll be a few backers, I guarantee it, that would spend this money. You might even want to go with a sort of 3D pre-painted terrain system for this. You see, that would really bring the traps that are involved with the walls and the floor to life even more. But what about the players in the game? What about the players? This is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this being a 1 to 5 player game. Now, old school Dungeons and Dragons, if you had less than 6 in a party, it could be a tough game. Original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, it wasn't even uncommon to have a secondary or tertiary character ready in the wings just in case something happened, or just to add to boost up a party when you only have 4 or 5 in it to begin with. With board games, though, that's going to be a problem. You can't function a board game very well with more than 5 players unless it's something that's specifically built up for a large party to play. Dungeon Delve board games are not like that. So 1 to 5. 5 would have to be the max. In fact, you might even want to make it 1 to 4 and save 5 for an expansion. Now, it's going to be a 1 versus all game at its core, but it's going to have multiple game plays. It's going to be 1 versus all, and this will give the most Dungeons and Dragons-like experience to the gamers themselves, because you will have someone acting as the Dungeon Master, and you will have the players. But besides that, I think that there could also be a very interesting call for team competitive play. 2 different groups of adventurers going in trying to steal as much treasure as they can, and maybe even defeat the Great Demi-Lich. Now, I think this would be very interesting with a solo mode, although it would be one of the lesser enjoyed solo modes for myself, although I would still play this. Using multiple characters. A solo mode where you're going to use a minimum of 3 or 4 characters or 4 or 5 characters to play the game. And this brings us to another point that I think it would also be great to have an app version of the game, an app AI. So if you wanted to play solo, or if you wanted to play all players with no one player needing to be the DM, you have that option available. With the 3D environment, with effects cards, traps cards, and counter cards, and some really amazing looking miniatures, I think this could definitely climb the ranks of what would be one of the greatest Kickstarter board games out there. It has enough of a mystique behind it. Why hasn't there been a Tomb of Horrors board game? Is it just difficult to do? Maybe the ideas I'm spewing out here are not as easy to pull off as they sound. But regardless, they sound pretty freaking cool. If you heard that there was going to be a Tomb of Horrors board game, what would you be expecting it to be? What do you think should be in the game? Is there something I said you think is just bull and is a waste of time for the game? Is there something you'd like to add to what I said? Or do you just have your own thoughts completely on it? Maybe you suddenly have an idea for a card game based on it or something. I don't know. Let us know. Whatever that is. But I still consider Tomb of Horrors to be one of the greatest modules ever written, and one of the few real badges of honor an old school player could be honestly showing off. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me, your buddy Big John and G for Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. And my friends, I am out of here.